Walk into almost any home in the US, and you'll probably find the HVAC system and all its ductwork stuffed right up into the attic. Builders love doing this to save floor space, and it's a convenient solution for architects when they forget to actually allocate space for the mechanicals. On paper, it looks like a win. In reality, it's one of the dumbest design decisions you can make when it comes to a typical vented attic. We're talking massive energy penalties, condensation, mold growth, and poor indoor air quality. Today, we're breaking down exactly why your vented attic is the worst place for your ductwork and air handling unit, and how you should be designing these systems to keep your home durable, efficient, and safe. Let's get into it. So first off, we need to look at the physics of a vented attic. By definition, a vented attic is designed to be outside of the thermal envelope and uncoupled from the air pressure boundary of your home. It's open to the outdoors through soffit and ridge vents, which means that in the summer it's incredibly hot, and in the winter it's freezing cold because, well, it's outside for all intents and purposes. Attic air temperatures on a typical summer afternoon easily reach 130 to 150 degrees. Think about that for a second. Inside your ducts, you have 55-degree conditioned air. Directly outside your ducts, in the attic, you have 130-degree or 150-degree air and a screaming hot roof deck. While the ceiling is usually insulated to R38 or R49, the ductwork is usually insulated to a meager R6 or R8 if you're lucky. That massive temperature difference leads to heavy thermal losses and immediate energy penalties of up to 30% compared to keeping your ducts and air handler inside the conditioned space, not to mention that duct leakage can exacerbate this problem. But more importantly, this configuration is a severe condensation and mold risk. In hot, humid, and mixed humid climates, the air inside the vented attic space is warm and humid, go figure. When that warm, humid air comes into contact with the cold surface of your ductwork or air handling unit, the air is rapidly chilled below its dew point, resulting in condensation. For example, if we have 130-degree air at 20% relative humidity, our dew point is going to be 76 degrees. This water drips onto your insulation and ceiling and satisfies the conditions that trigger mold growth. Air leakage in the ceiling plane through recessed can lights, supply and return ducts, and exhaust penetrations can also worsen these issues. Sometimes you'll see mold growing around these penetrations. During the wintertime, air leakage through these ceiling penetrations can result in warm, moisture-laden air entering the vented attic space, which is already cold and high in relative humidity, causing condensation to form on the backside of the sheathing and fasteners. Yes, you heard that correctly. This happens in vented attics. We also need to talk about duct leakage and pressure imbalances. In reality, it's incredibly difficult to build a 100% leak-free duct system. Historically, attic ducts leaked around 20%. Today, we've got it down to between 5% to 10%, which is very good but still flawed when they're located outside of conditioned space. When return or supply ducts leak inside a vented attic, you're either throwing conditioned air directly to the outdoors or sucking unconditioned, dusty attic air straight into your breathing zone. Even worse, if your ducts leak into the attic, they can depressurize the living space below. This creates negative pressure inside the home, turning your house into a vacuum. Humid outdoor air can be sucked in through any tiny crack, poorly sealed electrical outlets, or windows to reach equilibrium. In warm climates, this constant inward drawing of humid air hits the backside of your interior drywall, which is kept cold by your air conditioning, resulting in hidden interstitial condensation and systemic mold growth within the walls. In cold climates, this results in high energy bills and poor indoor air quality from dust particles and other air contaminants being sucked into the building through cracks in the building envelope. So, how do we solve this? The best practice approach is to locate your entire air distribution system and air handling unit inside the home's conditioned space with the vented attic above. This means your ductwork must be located below the attic's air barrier and within the interior pressure boundary. The only thing that should be in this type of attic is insulation on the attic floor. Now, to pull this off, you need to be deliberate during the design phase. You need to plan for a dedicated mechanical closet inside the house to place your air handler. Don't treat mechanical space as an afterthought. For the horizontal duct runs, you can construct either a service soffit or a dropped ceiling below the ceiling's air barrier to keep the ductwork inside conditioned space. By keeping the ductwork below the ceiling's air barrier, the ductwork is kept within a stable, conditioned environment, significantly reducing the potential for condensation on those ducts. Not to mention, if the ducts leak slightly, they simply leak into the house they were already trying to condition, resulting in virtually zero energy or moisture penalties, and you won't compromise your indoor air quality by sucking air from the unconditioned attic space. But let's be realistic. Sometimes, because of tight floor plans, vaulted ceilings, or complex retrofits, you simply can't find the space inside the living area for all those bulky ducts. Now, sometimes in very specific building conditions, it's possible to construct an airtight insulated enclosure box around the ductwork and trunk lines using rigid foam insulation so that the ducts are still coupled to the interior space while still allowing you to maintain that vented attic. Now, that's only possible if you've got a straightforward, simple attic without a ton of ducts winding around, and that you're able to guarantee good workmanship when it comes to the air sealing. But in most cases, if your ductwork and air handling unit needs to live in the attic, then that attic can no longer be designed as a vented space. You need to design it as an unvented, conditioned attic. By moving your air and thermal control layers from the flat ceiling plane to the surface of the roof sheathing or roof deck, you bring the entire attic space and all your ductwork completely inside the home's conditioned boundary. This protects the equipment from extreme temperatures, prevents condensation on the ductwork, and improves indoor air quality. Not to mention it's extremely beneficial in preventing embers from entering the attic through the vents if you're in a wildfire-prone area. Now, to build a code-compliant, unvented conditioned attic that actually prevents condensation from forming on the backside of the sheathing, there are two primary strategies we can use, and potentially a third that we'll talk about at the end. The first and most robust strategy, in terms of predictably mitigating condensation risk, is using exterior insulation outboard of the roof sheathing. The goal here is to warm up the temperature of the first condensing surface by keeping it closer to interior conditions. By wrapping the exterior of the roof deck with continuous rigid insulation, you keep that sheathing warm and closer to interior temperatures, eliminating the number of potential hours during which wintertime condensation can occur. Now, each climate is going to require a different amount of exterior insulation, with colder climates requiring a higher ratio of outboard insulation for condensation control. But remember, the more insulation that you stuff in the cavity space, the more you'll need to install outboard in order to maintain that ratio. It's a ratio, not a fixed number. Now, to build this correctly, you first install a continuous air barrier membrane directly over the structural roof sheathing. We strongly prefer a self-adhered membrane because it bonds directly to the wood, ensuring that no air can leak or migrate between the membrane and the sheathing. Next, you lay down your rigid insulation boards, such as rigid mineral wool, polyiso, EPS foam, whatever you prefer, in multiple layers with staggered and offset joints to limit convective loops at the seams. Lately, we've been defaulting to using insulated nail-based panels to simplify the buildup, which we have a whole video on that you can watch up here. Anyways, we install a second layer of sheathing to attach our roof covering to, the underlayment, and the roof covering. In cold climates, you'll want to vent the space between the rigid insulation and the second layer of sheathing for ice dam control. We've discussed this in other videos, but this can add some complexity to the system. The second strategy is applying closed cell spray foam directly to the underside of the roof sheathing from the interior. Closed cell spray foam is highly convenient because it acts simultaneously as thermal insulation, an air barrier, and a Class 2 vapor retarder at thicknesses of 2 inches or greater. It completely encapsulates the sheathing, moving the first condensing surface to the warm interior face of the cured foam. R806.5 of the IRC, or International Residential Code, mentions the use of air-impermeable insulation with a Class 2 vapor retarder. This pretty much means closed cell spray foam, and while there are other ways to technically achieve that requirement, like using the cut and cobble method, functionally and practically, it means closed cell spray foam, as this was the intention. Now, open cell spray foam can work in some climates, like in warm climates, but it doesn't have vapor retarding qualities like closed cell, which means you have to do other things to make the system work. Anyways, spray foam isn't a silver bullet, and we tend to avoid it on our projects whenever possible for several reasons. First, we found that closed-cell spray foam has a known potential to off-gas chemicals long after the initial installation, which can trigger respiratory issues. We've seen it from improperly installed, improperly mixed foam, and we've seen it from properly installed and manufacturer-approved foam. Some manufacturers are better than others. Go and watch our spray foam crash course if you haven't already. The other thing is the cracking potential. Wood framing naturally swells and contracts with changes in seasonal moisture content. Because the spray foam cures into a rigid material, the structural movement can cause the foam to crack at the rafter-to-foam interface. Once a crack opens up, warm, moist air leaks into the gap and condenses directly on the underside of the sheathing. Because closed-cell foam is a vapor retarder, that trapped moisture has a very difficult time drying out, leading to rot over time. This is more of a cold climate issue where the surface of the roof can experience thermal shock, Finally, if a small leak develops, the spray foam will trap that liquid water against the wood sheathing, masking the leak until major deterioration has already occurred. We tend to recommend installing a vented roof covering with a vapor-permeable roof underlayment in spray foam roofs to mitigate this risk and provide a path for moisture to dry out to the exterior. Guys, here's the cold, hard truth. The building industry is flooded with snake oil solutions that either promise a mold-proof home or claim to provide an instant fix to your mold issues. The problem is that none of these so-called solutions actually address the root of the problem. Real solutions are found in the physics of the building envelope. As building envelope consultants, we deal with these issues on a daily basis for a wide range of different climates and building conditions, and we know what works and what doesn't. No gimmicky products, no paid product placement. We are entirely self-sponsored. Now, this has given us the opportunity to compile together what we're calling the Essential Guide to Mold-Resistant Construction, using building science principles, applied physics, and real-world construction details that work. In this guide, we discuss the biology of mold, why mold grows, why buildings fail from a water management perspective, the physics of moisture in buildings, both in liquid form and vapor form, climate-specific building strategies, air leakage, condensation, construction details, HVAC, and even high-risk assemblies and how to fix them. Stop leaving durability to chance and equip yourself with the ultimate resource for a predictable, moisture-free, mold-resistant home in any climate, whether you're building in hot, humid Florida, warm, dry California, or the coldest parts of the Northeast. Defeat mold once and for all. The guide is only available at ASIRI-designs.com/shop. Links in the description below. Now, back to the video. Now, this third strategy is an excellent alternative if you want to avoid both the high cost of exterior rigid insulation and the chemical risks or potential cracking of spray foam, and I'll preface this by saying that this strategy is only if you're building in a warm climate. This is the vapor diffusion port. This is a passive moisture removal strategy specifically designed and code-approved for hot, dry, and warm humid climates, specifically IECC climate zones 1, 2, and 3. It allows us to use highly affordable, air-permeable, and vapor-permeable insulation materials in isolation, like fiberglass, mineral wool, or dense-packed cellulose in our rafter cavities. To understand how this works, you have to understand hygric buoyancy. Warm, moisture-laden air is less dense than dry air, and will displace dry air, meaning water vapor naturally rises and accumulates at the highest point of the roof assembly, the ridge. To build a vapor diffusion port, you cut a slot in the roof sheathing at the ridge, identical to a standard ridge vent condition, but instead of leaving it open, you seal that slot with a watertight, airtight, but highly vapor-permeable membrane that has a perm rating of around 50 perms. This membrane maintains your continuous air barrier and keeps out rainwater, but allows the accumulated water vapor to passively diffuse out of the building. You then cap the ridge with a standard ridge vent to facilitate a small amount of airflow above the membrane to carry the moisture away. This isn't the same as a vented attic or vented roof. This is just a mechanism we're using to remove the moisture that passes through the diffusion port. Now, because you're using air-permeable cavity insulation, you need to provide active conditioning to the attic space, and this is true of any conditioned attic, but it's especially important with this strategy and required by code. This is typically accomplished by delivering a small amount of supply air, at least 50 cubic feet per minute for every 1,000 square feet of ceiling area, or by installing a dedicated dehumidifier in the attic or both. Basically, we want to get dry air circulating in the attic space to address any moisture buildup so that our diffusion port isn't being completely inundated. Look, whether you're designing a new custom home or planning an attic retrofit, it always comes back to a single, unbreakable rule of nature. If you solve for water, you solve for mold. If you want to keep your roof dry and your energy bills low, keep your mechanical systems inside the home's primary thermal boundary, or design a robust, unvented, conditioned attic. Guys, if you found this video helpful, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more weekly building science videos, and head over to our website at ASIRI-designs.com, where we have over 150 free building science articles that cover a wide range of topics. Links will be in the description below. For now, good luck with your projects. Cheers.